Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. I've got a fresh monitor recommendation video for you this week, focusing exclusively on monitors suited to multiplayer gaming. A lot of people purchase a display specifically to play competitive shooters or other multiplayer titles and want something with strengths that are focused on those sorts of games. So this guide is focused on monitors that are fast and offer great motion clarity to give you an edge in competitive games and make the experience more fun. As with our previous best of videos, we tend to talk about and recommend monitors we've personally tested and know to be good, or monitors that are very similar to products we have tested. It's always worth going back and checking out the dedicated monitor reviews we produce for more in-depth thoughts on each product, but just so you know, these recommendations are not sponsored in any way by any company, they're based on our testing and reviews. Also, a note on pricing. While pricing was accurate when we made this video, prices do change pretty often, so it's always worth checking out the links in the description, which will provide up-to-date pricing information. So why are we creating a video focused on multiplayer monitors? Well, in our general recommendation guides, we tend to focus on products that are balanced and suited to many different use cases. This includes products that are great for all types of games, monitors that are great for gaming and productivity, monitors that deliver outstanding HDR. But if you're only interested in multiplayer gaming, your priorities are going to be pretty different. HDR is not going to be an important factor because most popular competitive titles either don't support HDR or put you at a disadvantage if you use HDR. Resolution becomes less important than the refresh rate and input lag, and there's a strong focus on achieving crystal clear motion clarity above all other factors that go into image quality. The recommendations in this video are dialed in to prioritize the things that benefit multiplayer experiences. We're focusing on high refresh rate because a higher refresh rate improves motion clarity, produces greater smoothness, and lowers input latency. We're focusing on response time performance because faster response times reduce ghosting and blur and improve motion clarity. We're going to recommend monitors with great backlight strobing for competitive pros that want the absolute best clarity you can get. When choosing a monitor for multiplayer gaming, the first question you need to ask yourself is, do I want to use backlight strobing technology or not? Backlight strobing, or black frame insertion, is a technology that pulses the image on screen at each refresh, returning to black between each frame. This is in contrast to the way modern displays normally operate, which is displaying the image on screen all of the time for the entire refresh cycle, updating the image at each refresh. This is known as sample and hold. The benefit of backlight strobing is it improves motion clarity relative to normal sample and hold operation at a given refresh rate, and this effect can be more pronounced at lower refresh rates, as sample and hold monitors have more motion blur at lower refreshes. When tracking moving objects across the screen, backlight strobing effectively tricks your brain into perceiving this motion at a much higher level of clarity while hiding the strobe or flicker effect so it doesn't look like the screen is pulsing. It's a really neat effect and it works well. But there are downsides to backlight strobing which don't always make the technology the best way to play games. If you are particularly sensitive to flicker, for example you get eye strain or headaches using monitors that flicker their backlight, then backlight strobing will be unpleasant to use and you should avoid it. For the best backlight strobing experiences, you typically have to sacrifice other features as well, including variable refresh rate support, HDR, and in some cases, high levels of brightness. Monitors with the best strobing tend to be TN LCDs with weak color performance and terrible viewing angles. The best use cases for backlight strobing are when you are playing a game at a fixed, highly consistent frame rate and are willing to sacrifice colors and brightness in the pursuit of clarity. You should avoid backlight strobing if you want to or have to run at a variable refresh rate, if you want better flexibility over the color and brightness experience, or if you find backlight flicker unpleasant or annoying. Ultimately, it's a personal preference thing. Some people love the technology, others hate it. If you think you'd know what you'd prefer, well, here are our recommendations. If you're not especially interested in backlight strobing, the best motion clarity you can get right now is a high refresh rate OLED. OLEDs are often thought of as these stunning HDR monitors with brilliant colors and awesome contrast, but they're amazing competitive multiplayer monitors as well. This is because they are ridiculously fast at transitioning and pack some of the highest refresh rates on the market. When you combine those things, you get elite motion clarity. The best motion clarity you can get right now, outside of premium backlight strobed LCDs, is with a 480Hz OLED. In particular, I think a 27-inch 1440p 480Hz OLED is going to be the best for multiplayer gaming, and there's a few models out there right now, all delivering the same clarity from brands like Asus, Sony, and soon LG with their recently announced model. The one I've tested is the Asus ROG Swift OLED PG27 AQDP. It's a 27-inch 1440p 480Hz W OLED, and it's excellent. Where this display shines for multiplayer is the combination of 0.3 millisecond response times and its 480Hz refresh rate. OLED panels are so fast that they deliver about a 1.5 times advantage in clarity over an LCD at the same refresh rate. So for an LCD to offer the same clarity as this 480Hz OLED, it would have to run upwards of 700Hz. The PG27 AQDP offers this clarity at a 1440p resolution with full adaptive sync compatibility, proper HDR support if you want it, and class-leading input lag that makes it one of the most responsive monitors I've ever tested. It's absolutely incredible for fast-paced multiplayer gaming, though its hefty price tag of $1,000 US makes it very much a premium display for high-end buyers. With OLED monitors, you get the same 0.3 millisecond response times at all refresh rates, so the eventual level of clarity you receive is highly dictated by the refresh rate. The higher, the better. But this also means that if you don't envision yourself playing games at 480 FPS or even 400 FPS, then you can get a very similar experience from a cheaper, lower refresh rate OLED. For example, if you mostly play Call of Duty at 200 FPS and use adaptive sync to run your monitor at 200Hz like we recommend, there is no difference in clarity between a 240Hz W OLED, 360Hz QD OLED, or 480Hz W OLED, so you may as well just get a 240Hz model. Of course, those higher refresh rate models will have better longevity as you upgrade your PC to run games even faster, but if you're confident you wouldn't run games above 240 FPS, then a 240Hz OLED is just fine, and you'll end up with clarity at that refresh rate that's similar to a 360Hz LCD. With lower refresh rate OLEDs, there's a few ways to go. I really like the Asus ROG Strix XG27 AQDMG as a 27-inch 1440p 240Hz W OLED with a glossy finish, and it's usually about $650 US, which is much cheaper than the 480Hz variant. I've even seen a few sales push it to $550. But there's also a few 240Hz QD OLED variants that have been amazingly cheap too, like the AOC Agon Pro AG276QZD2 that I haven't tested, which could also be worth considering. Straddling the middle of these 2 points are 360Hz QD OLEDs, which are typically a little more expensive than 240Hz models, but still quite a bit cheaper than the 480Hz beasts. All of the products I've tested in this category have performed really well, so I'd recommend all of the MSI MPG271QRX, the Dell Alienware AW2725DF, and Gigabyte Aorus FO27Q3, depending on pricing in your region. All of these OLEDs are really safe bets for multiplayer gaming at high refresh rates and excellent levels of clarity. Plus, they give you the flexibility to enjoy other types of games with stunning HDR and brilliant contrast. If you want the best overall motion clarity and are interested in using backlight strobing, the best options on the market right now are 24-inch 1080p TN LCD monitors that use some form of elite strobing tech. These can deliver even greater levels of clarity than a 480Hz OLED. Now, of course, they are a very different type of display that is designed specifically for this niche use case, but boy do they deliver stunning performance for multiplayer titles. The monitor I think delivers the best overall motion clarity is the Asus ROG Swift Pro PG248QP, which implements ULMB2 backlight strobing. It's a 24-inch 1080p 540Hz TN LCD, which unfortunately costs $730 US, an outrageous price for a TN monitor, but it could still be worth considering if you prioritize clarity above all else. The native performance of this monitor is ridiculous for an LCD. A 2.3 millisecond response time average puts it far ahead of a typical LCD screen, and with just a 1.8 millisecond response time average at 540Hz, it's the fastest LCD I've ever tested, and that's before backlight strobing. With ULMB2 activated, this monitor is crystal clear, and this technology does allow you to unlock increased clarity at lower refresh rates if you can't quite hit 540 FPS in the game you're playing. ULMB2 is incredibly well optimized and delivers the clarity, smoothness, and low input lag you'd expect from a pro-level premium esports monitor. There are some weaknesses though related to its TN panel, in addition to the weaknesses of backlight strobing we mentioned at the start of this video. This display has awful viewing angles with a narrow sweet spot, and while ASUS try to mitigate this through excellent factory calibration and a decent contrast ratio for a TN LCD, the color experience is far below that of an OLED. I'd only recommend the PG248QP and other TN LCDs if you favor speed and clarity well above other aspects to a monitor. If you do want something that is a bit better in terms of its color performance and those sort of things, then OLED's IPS LCDs are going to be much better. There's a couple of other great backlight strobing experiences available if you don't want to spend over $700 on the PG248QP. A slightly more reasonable option is the BenQ Zowie XL2566K, which is also a 24-inch 1080p TN LCD, but this time at 360Hz with DIAC Plus backlight strobing. At $550 US, it's a cheaper but still premium display that offers similar motion clarity to the PG248QP, especially when both are run at 360Hz. For example, if you can only run the game you're playing at 360 FPS. At 540Hz, the ASUS model pulls ahead, but the XL2566K is still a really impressive showing that is great for esports gaming. If you still want access to top-tier backlight strobing but can't justify spending over $500 US, then I would recommend the BenQ Zowie XL2546X. At $370 US, as of the time of filming this video, it's one of the cheapest models you can get that still features premium backlight strobing tech through DIAC 2. It gets pretty close to those high-tier models, but it tops out at 240Hz, which is why it's nearly $200 cheaper than the XL2566K. It's still a 24-inch 1080p TN monitor with the downsides associated with that technology, but the clarity it provides is excellent. So far, we've been discussing premium displays, so what should you get if you want something more affordable? Well, right now there are plenty of great value high refresh rate monitors offering 240Hz refresh rates at either 1440p or 1080p with nice high quality IPS LCD panels. 1440p choices are great for multiplayer gaming because the increased resolution makes it easier to resolve fine details like enemies in the distance. The sharper presentation is better for UI-heavy games like, say, real-time strategies, which are of course multiplayer games, and it enables larger screen sizes that some people prefer. Most mid-range and even mainstream graphics cards can pump out hundreds of frames per second in the most popular esports games at 1440p, so the performance penalty relative to 1080p can be minor, especially when CPU limited. Right now at 1440p, I'd recommend the MSI G274QPX and the LG 27GR83Q. On their best days, you'll find both hovering a little below $300 US, though typically we see pricing around $350, with the MSI model usually about $30 cheaper. These are both 27-inch 1440p 240Hz IPS LCD monitors, offering fast performance, decent clarity, and great tuning. And with IPS panels, they also offer a really nice color experience with wide viewing angles and good calibration. The LG model is slightly better tuned in terms of response time performance. It's faster both on average and at its maximum 240Hz refresh rate. However, it doesn't feature any form of backlight strobing tech, whereas the MSI model does include a fairly basic strobed mode that can improve clarity, though it's not nearly as good as the best strobe TNs. This feature, along with price, is going to decide which way you might want to go. If you don't care about strobing, and the LG model is only 10 to 15% more expensive, that's what I'd get, as it's generally the better monitor. If the MSI model is cheaper, or if you want strobing, it's the better buy. There's a couple of other monitors I'd recommend depending on the circumstances. Get the ASUS ROG Strix XG27AQMR if you want an increased 300Hz refresh rate and better backlight strobing, but I'd only pay a maximum of $400 for it, and often it's well above that. The Gigabyte M27QX is also worth considering if you can find it at a similar price to the MSI G274QPX, as it performs similarly. There's also the ASUS ROG Swift PG27AQN if you want the highest refresh rate, best performing 1440p LCD at 360Hz that also supports great ULMB2 backlight strobing, though it's a very expensive $700 US. If high refresh rates are your priority and you don't want to spend more than $200 US, this is where 1080p 240Hz monitors come more into play. There hasn't been a lot going on in this area over the last few years, but you can now pick up decent monitors like the ASUS TUF Gaming VG259QM, which is a 24-inch 1080p 280Hz IPS LCD, for just $180 US. I tested the larger 27-inch variant, the VG279QM, way back in 2020, and its performance still holds up relatively well today. Plus, it's one of the cheapest 1080p 240Hz IPS monitors you can get. I'd steer clear of any of the lower cost 1080p 240Hz VA monitors though, which usually occupy lower price points. Every time I've tested one of these budget VA products, I've been really disappointed with the motion performance, especially response time speed and dark smearing. IPS is a much safer choice in this range, and for multiplayer gamers that demand clarity, I just can't recommend a crappy VA LCD. Not everyone wants or even needs a high refresh rate 240Hz monitor for multiplayer gaming, especially when medium refresh rate models in that 144 to 180Hz zone are retailing for under $220 US these days at a 1440p resolution. There are lots of these monitors that we've recommended in the past, so which are the best when multiplayer gaming is the focus? I really like the response time tuning of the Asus ROG Strix XG27 ACS. It seems like I've recommended way too many Asus monitors in this video, but at the moment they have a great range of monitors tuned for speed. The XG27 ACS is a 27-inch 1440p 180Hz IPS LCD with a single overdrive mode experience and great factory tuning in general, though it's usually up near $280 US, which isn't a great deal, but I have seen it near $200 or even under $200 at times, at which point it's a great buy in this sort of category. When the LG 27GP83B is priced near $220 US, as it has been at times, it's another great choice. They're not quite as good as the Asus model. A 27-inch 1440p 165Hz IPS LCD, the 27GP83B is fast at its highest refresh rate, offering a 4.8 millisecond response time and good performance across the refresh rate range. It has great image quality too, outside of its contrast ratio, which is pretty low, and of course you can also consider its brother, the 27GP850. Some of the options we've looked at and recommended in the past are better for certain types of use than others. The MSI G274QPF-QD and Gigabyte M27QP, for example, are both decently fast at their maximum refresh rates, but less impressive when looking at average performance, especially compared to the aforementioned Asus and LG models. Then there are other models like the Dell G2724D, which is better for average performance and not quite as impressive at the maximum refresh rate. Check out those reviews and also our best 1440p monitors video for more thoughts and information. For budget 1080p gamers after something with a decent refresh rate as an entry point to multiplayer gaming, just get the AOC 24G4. This is a newer, better version of the 1080p AOC monitors I've been recommending previously, and at around $125 US, I can't see any better or more reliable choices. The 24G4 is a 24-inch 1080p 180Hz IPS LCD monitor that, relative to its predecessor, features improved response time tuning and a higher refresh rate. It's not an outstandingly fast display, but it offers a good contrast ratio, wide color gamut, great factory calibration and low input lag. This ends up creating a nice overall package that delivers a strong balance of motion performance and color quality. The final category in this video are for mixed-use monitors. If you want something that's excellent for multiplayer gaming, but also really well suited to single-player experiences or even productivity work, this is where I think dual-mode monitors are a great choice. With the latest dual-mode WOLED and IPS LCD panels, you can enjoy a great high-resolution 4K experience at a lower refresh rate before switching into a fast 300Hz plus experience at 1080p for competitive games. The best option on the market right now that does both of these things to the best ability is the Asus ROG Swift PG32 UCDP, a 32-inch 4K 240Hz WOLED monitor with dual mode functionality that also allows the panel to run at 1080p 480Hz. As we showed earlier when discussing those high refresh rate 1440p 480Hz OLEDs, that sort of experience is exactly what you get with the PG32 UCDP, just at 1080p scaled up to the size of this display. And then on top of that elite tier motion performance in its 1080p mode, the 4K mode is superb for other types of games. The resolution is excellent, the HDR experience is fantastic due to per pixel OLED control and a great contrast ratio, there's fantastic viewing angles and plenty of other benefits from an OLED panel. However, due to the risk of permanent burn-in, I wouldn't recommend this display for tons of productivity work or static content in addition to single player or multiplayer gaming. This is a display to use for gaming or content consumption only, but it's great for playing a very wide range of games, both multiplayer and single player. On the LCD front, there's the Asus ROG Strix XG27 UCG, which is the better of the dual mode LCDs that we've tested so far. It's a 27-inch 4K 160Hz IPS LCD that can be run in a 1080p 320Hz mode, so a similar setup to the dual mode 4K W OLED, but with reduced refresh rates in this LCD panel instead. This display makes a lot more sense for people wanting a 4K screen for work and a high refresh rate monitor for competitive gaming in one. It has a brilliant resolution in its 4K mode, all of the benefits of an IPS LCD like wide viewing angles and high brightness, plus no risk of burn-in when used with static desktop apps. Then in the 1080p 320Hz mode, you get improved motion clarity and better input lag, and Asus have tuned the mode nicely so that it's of genuine benefit relative to the normal 4K mode. Now, of course, it's not as optimized for high refresh rate gaming as you'd see from a dedicated high refresh panel, but this is a more balanced experience that allows you to do two things with the same monitor. At $500 US, it could be worth considering. And that does it for today's monitor recommendation video. Plenty of options in this one for multiplayer gamers across a range of categories, so hopefully this is something that will help you pick out the best monitor for the games you play. Pricing and buy links for the monitors we've been talking about are in the description. So anyway, that's it for this one. If you do appreciate our monitor testing and in-depth thoughts on all of these displays, then please do consider supporting us on Patreon. It takes a lot of time and effort to test all the monitors we talk about in these recommendation videos. You can of course check out all of those reviews right here on the channel, and we can only do so with the support of our Patreon members. So thanks to everyone who has signed up and gained access to some cool benefits in return, like our monthly live streams, our Discord chat, which is a great place to chat about monitors, and also we offer things like ICC profiles for the monitors that we've tested in these videos. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.